nearby vineyard at the end of this maze lies a tasty treat. It's dark, rich, decadent, sweet, smooth, and utterly tempting. It's, you guessed it, chocolate.
Hi, I'm Tash Topchi and I'm from Babalila Chocolates, and we're situated in Wauchope at Bago Vineyards. Babalila is my handmade chocolate business, inspired by my mother. So Baba is grandmother and Lila was my mother's name. They were the inspiration. They were the inspiration for summoning up, I suppose, my heritage once again, and also the chocolate recipe, which they passed down to me. We did grow up with a lot of, chocolate, but I think a lot of Europeans did actually. And Mum, she used to make chocolates as well for a couple of the small chocolate shops in our local area. They weren't her own recipes as such, they were handed down from family and friends. So the chocolate recipes are very similar to a lot of other Slavic chocolates that are around.
All right, my turn.
So your turn.
Okay, dip, tap, roll, place. Dip, tap, roll, place. 10 hours later.
We have a spoon. That one will be $300. It's very labour intensive. The journey of Babalila came about by chance, I suppose. I was working actually as a graphic designer at the time, and I suppose just re-evaluating a few work-life balances, and I found Mum's box for chocolate making, and I started making just a few chocolates on the side at home. It was just a bit of playing initially. From then on, it actually just started to grow. So I started setting up for just small base production, just at markets, and people started to get quite enthused about these wonderful Russian chocolates.
Tash, it's the phone.
I'll be back.
Okay, see you in a minute. Oh, that is excellent. That's fantastic.
That was my supplier saying he's run out of... The foundation of Babalila is the 12 flavours. I must admit my favourite has always been the prune and brandy one, and it's something that my mother always recognised as being the real Russian chocolate. It's so much in one little package. It's like this whole little dessert. So you have this, all the different textures through there, you have the crunch of the chocolate, you have this sort of softness of this prune that goes into this creaminess of the centre, and it's just this wonderful experience. Living in this area, I also too wanted to utilise what our area has to offer, and also acknowledge my part of, my other part of my heritage, being Australian. And so I've actually created a whole native Australian range. So I've got this fusion of a Russian recipe with native Australian products through it. They're a product that is actually only 20 kilometres away. It's important that small businesses support one another. You can pass information on, which actually will help them or help yourself. You don't know sort of week to week what it's going to bring. You really need to be confident in your product. My previous life was a graphic designer. I still believe, there is a way to present something in a way that will attract people. So I spent a lot of time developing my little logo. It's become more personal. I've actually created everything from the start. This chocolate business still is very creative. It's nice to do something with my hands, but it's also nice to have a bit of meaning and a bit of poetry behind what you're doing. And I love the story, of Mum, of where she was born. I love her journey. I love a lot of parts of our Russian culture. It's a bit of an exotic culture, I suppose. They're wrapped in this, this lovely sort of vibrance, and they're made with quality. They're made with, by hand. There's no machinery made, and not everyone sees what's happening in the background, but I like to use things that imbue sort of that poetry where, I have my mother's fork that she made over 40 years ago. That's the only thing that I use every day, to actually dip my chocolates with. And I've tried other forks, but this one just fits perfectly in my hand. So it's, it's an old thing. It has a story too. And I use little things like, the old Chinese teacups that my mother had. See, I've even used my mother's old Russian spoons. For me, instead of using something clinical, having these little bits of antiques around makes me feel more passionate and poetic, I suppose. The Babalila business has really reconnected me to my Russian heritage. And it's actually taught me a lot, because I've actually gone out and studied a lot more about my heritage and found out a lot more about my heritage. It's something I can pass on to my daughter, I can share with my friends, and it becomes a self-discovery of where your roots actually are from. With chocolate making, I suppose you do need to have a few personal qualities. You need to have a hint of obsessiveness. I make sure things are in order and make sure things are in line, and it speeds the production up, especially when you're making, a couple of thousand chocolates through the week and it's all by hand. You need to be quite speedy about it, but at the same time you need to have a bit of precision about what you're doing. So there's the passion, there's the obsessiveness, and being efficient. It enables you to, I suppose, be a little bit more larger in your manufacturing and still keep it handmade. And my daughter Rihanna, who's also a designer, she has that same passion. It's been 100% important that she's been part of this business. When I pass it on to her, if she chooses to change it, which I've done as well, it'll be hers to do what she wishes when the time comes. Mum would be so proud, because it's something that, no, stop.
Here we go.
I have, I suppose, not just made the chocolates and turned it into a business. For one, she was always keen on business, but I think she would be proud that I'm acknowledging our heritage and actually giving it, I suppose, the recognition that Mum would have hoped to see.
The greatest irony. The chocolate maker has had too much chocolate.
She really has. She was a very cultured woman, and she, I think, would have loved to see that culture put on show.
So, dip in and stir?
Dip in and stir.
So, Rihanna, is this legacy going to be carried on through you?
I think I've got a few ideas of my own.
Fair enough. Well, to history and to the future. You have to use your hand. Cycling away to work off a belly full of chocolate, I pondered over the nature of Tasha's family legacy. Such a cultural inheritance is certainly one to be savoured. This is the experiment which has gone wrong.
Yeah.
So you can
We agreed it looks stupid and you need to have
thank
it.